The Fox and the Grapes. An Aesop fable. On a hot summer afternoon, a fox became quite hungry and thirsty. Eagerly, he began to search for his next meal. He looked up and spotted a vine of grapes hanging from a tall tree. As he stared at the juicy fruit, his mouth watered. These grapes were not the common, small green grapes he usually found. Each one was as big as a red plum. "Ah," he said, "red grapes! I truly prefer the red grapes to the green ones. The red grapes are so much sweeter." He stood up on his back legs and sniffed the grapes. Then he tried to pull them down. Unfortunately, that didn't work. The fox scratched his head and wondered what he should do next. Climbing the tree was out of the question. Still, the grapes were too high to allow him to reach them. He would have to use his strong legs to leap up and snatch a bunch. He walked back several yards and then ran toward the grapes. He pumped his legs and jumped up with all the force he could gather, but he missed the vine. Instead, he tumbled into a nearby mud puddle. Now the fox was hungrier than ever. His stomach rumbled like a freight train. He said, "I must try again." He walked back 20 yards this time. Then he ran faster toward his goal, the bunch of ripe, juicy grapes. Alas, his second try was no better than the first. He hit his head on the firm ground and then rolled head over heels. He sat on a tree stump and rubbed his head. Hitting the ground like that had given him a horrible headache. This particular fox had never been a patient creature. Now his hunger was making him anxious and grumpy. He had to get those grapes. The fox stood up once more, but his legs were unsteady. He wobbled backward and felt a little faint. He sat on the ground until he felt stronger. Finally, there was only a trace of a headache left. He walked back 50 yards this time. Then he ran full speed ahead. He jumped up, but he missed the grapes and fell into a patch of thorny bushes. "Ouch!" the fox yelled. He pulled himself out of the patch. Twigs with thorns tore at his fur, and he howled with each step he took. Then he shook his fist at the grapes. He yelled, "What a dumb bunch of grapes! Let someone else eat you! I bet you're bitter anyway!" And with that, he walked away in a huff. Moral: it is easier to pretend you do not want what you cannot get.
Driving on Route 66, magazine article. Most likely, the street you live on is smooth and paved, not rough and dusty. But are you aware that paved roads were not always so common? About 100 years ago, if you wanted to travel, your horse and buggy would use a dirt road. Sometimes, these roads were a little more than trails. Their paths drifted this way and that. In 1908, the Model T Ford was introduced to Americans. This was the first car that people could afford to buy. However, roads that were made for horses weren't good enough for cars. A car had a solid body, and it weighed a lot. It could get stuck when it was driven on a muddy road. An entire trip could be ruined. In 1916, Congress set aside money to build roads. Later, a paved route that started in chilly Chicago was mapped out. It would go through Oklahoma and end in warm, sunny Los Angeles. The road was named Route 66. In 1938, the last section of the road was paved. Route 66 was a popular highway. Many people were tired of long, cold winters. Their aim was to move to a place with mild weather. They used Route 66 to travel west. Truckers carrying goods used Route 66 too. Motels and restaurants popped up along the highway. Over the next 30 years, many people used Route 66. It was nicknamed Main Street of America. There was even a popular television show called Route 66. Then came much bigger highways that crossed the country. People were buying newer and faster cars. They wanted better roads and more lanes. By the 1980s, these big highways were in place. That was the beginning of the end for Route 66. Today, Route 66 is no longer a main route westward, but it refuses to disappear. Drivers traveling west on other roads might take a side trip and travel along Route 66. Once there, they might pause at the stores and motels that are still open. There won't be many, though. because many towns have disappeared. Many buildings are empty and people have moved away. Route 66 is a story of both success and defeat. It was an important road for many years, but then its importance faded. Many people still seek out Route 66 to discover what life on the highway once was like.
Going green every day. Magazine article. Do you want to help save the earth? You can, and it doesn't have to be a struggle. Doing little things every day can really help. Do you recycle? Recycling helps save Earth's resources. Setting aside paper takes only a few moments, but it can save many trees. Many bottles and cans are returnable for money. You can get 5 cents or more when you return them to the store. Check the label of these containers to find their return value. Once recycled, paper, bottles, and cans can be used again. Do you reuse items you already have? Can you bring your lunch in a paper bag? Every bag you use a second time doesn't cost you an extra penny. Now that's a bargain. Think of other items that you can reuse. Tell your family members about them. Listen to them gasp at your ideas. Did you know that you can clean most of the things in your house with water, vinegar, and baking soda? Many people are sensitive to chemical cleaners. These products can cause allergies or skin problems. Baking soda and vinegar are not harmful, yet they can clean sinks, floors, and other big surfaces. These simple, natural cleaners cost less too. Water is a natural resource. When you brush your teeth, don't wander away and leave the water running. Turn it off. Reduce the amount of water you use. You will save 2 gallons or more. You can also reduce the amount of electricity you use by turning off the lights when you leave a room. Be loyal to your local farmers markets. Many fruits and vegetables are grown far away. They travel on ships and trucks to get to where you live. Farmers who sell their goods at the local farmers market don't have to travel as far to bring you your food. Buying from them saves a lot of gas and oil. Cleaning up your town on Earth Day is a great way to become active in your community. Most towns clear litter from parks, roads, and the banks of rivers on Earth Day. Next April, see what you can do to help. Going green is as easy as taking a walk and enjoying the outdoors. Vary your walks to see something new each time. Watch a small animal and see where it goes. Nature is a never-ending show, and watching it requires no electricity.
The Handsome Stag, a folktale. There once was a young stag that liked to use a shallow pool of water as a mirror. Every day, he would look down into it to notice how handsome he was. His antlers towered above his head. He moved them this way and that in order to get a better look. One day, he carried on a silly conversation with himself. "Ah, what beautiful antlers you have." "They are nice. Look at your glorious back and neck, though. It's hard to say which part is the most beautiful." "Don't be ridiculous. I insist that your antlers are the best part." As the stag moved to get a better view of himself, he caught sight of his legs. Immediately, he felt gloomy. His legs were long and skinny. He wondered how they were able to hold up his large body and giant antlers. Then he sighed and went back to admiring his antlers until he became restless and bored. At last, he moved on to the field to eat grass. Suddenly, the quiet of the afternoon was ended by the sounds of a hunter's horn and a loud bang. The dry branch of a tree was shattered by the gunshot. The stag raised his head in fear as the pieces of the branch fell to the ground. The stag was no coward. He knew, however, that even a hunter with little shooting talent could cause him harm. He began running. His long, slender legs carried him fast and far. The stag spotted a passage inside a dark, thick part of the woods. He knew this path would take him to a stream. The hounds would lose his scent there. Then he could escape the hunting party. Faster and faster he moved, his strong legs pushing him off the ground. Then, just as the stag entered the thickest part of the forest, some low branches caught his antlers. He struggled and struggled. He pulled this way and that way. He had to avoid capture by the hunters. The stag tried to free himself for a good 5 minutes. The branches poked his body, and his skin was scratched and sore. Finally, he pulled his antlers out and ran upstream. When he was safe, the stag walked to a pool to drink some water and calm down. Before he put his head down to drink, he spotted the image of his body in the pool. All of a sudden, his antlers seemed heavy and useless. Then he exclaimed, "Long have I admired my antlers and heavy body, but it was my slender, strong legs that saved me today."
The International Space Station. Journal article. In a brilliant flash of light, the space shuttle blasts off from a launching pad. It is heading towards the International Space Station, or ISS. The shuttle carries food, equipment, and supplies to this place where astronauts live and work. The ISS circles Earth more than 150 miles above our planet's atmosphere. If you look down on the ISS, you would see something that looks like a giant bird. The bird's wings are actually solar panels. These capture energy for the station. The body of the bird contains labs and a place to eat, sleep, and relax. Both Russia and the United States had plans for a space station. They knew that building a station together would be cheaper. Once the two countries were convinced that the project could be successful, they united their plans and worked together. Then other countries plunged into the project. These countries included Japan, Canada, France, and Italy. Since the year 2000, humans have lived on the space station. Their days are very busy. Some astronauts complete experiments. Others work as mechanics, using robot arms to fix machines. Some workers grow plants. All astronauts are highly trained. Their actions must be swift and sure when problems arise. Working in space is a dangerous job. Sometimes, an astronaut must work outside. To do so, he or she puts on a spacesuit and takes a spacewalk outside the station. Conditions in space are harsh. It is very cold outside the space station, and there is no air there. A human cannot endure these conditions without the special suit. Moving around in space is not easy either. Gravity doesn't hold the body in one place. There is always the danger of floating away. Astronauts must tie themselves down when sleeping, cooking, or exercising. On the plus side, heavy things seem light in space. Astronauts can lift and move huge pieces of equipment in space. The space station is as big as a football field. Keeping it clean is on the to-do list. Astronauts must cook for themselves too. They must exercise 2 hours a day to stay strong. Free time is precious. It is often spent taking photographs, reading, writing emails home, or just glancing out the window at Earth below. The International Space Station is a remarkable workplace in space. Exciting discoveries come from research being done there. Most important, countries are joining together to explore the ultimate frontier: space.
King Tut, Then and Now. Historical nonfiction. He was only 9 years old when he became king. When his father died, he became the ruler, or pharaoh. King Tut, short for Tutankhamun, ruled for only 10 years. Yet he is one of Egypt's most famous kings. King Tut isn't known for the wars he won. His fame isn't based on his wisdom or on the cities he built. Instead, he is known for the treasures he left behind. King Tut ruled more than 3,000 years ago. Little is known about his life. What we do know is based on what was found in his tomb. When a pharaoh died, he was buried with things he might need on a journey. He would carry jewelry, perfume, and clothing. He would need a golden throne. A departing ruler would want to sail away in a ship. The tombs of pharaohs were filled with unbelievable riches. The Egyptian pharaohs were buried in the Valley of the Kings. In early Egyptian times, this area was guarded to prevent robberies. Still, robbers roamed the valley. They broke through the pharaohs' tombs and stole everything they could. King Tut's tomb had been basically untouched. Grave robbers had broken in once, but they had not emptied the tomb. That is why the discovery in 1922 was so exciting. No one else had entered King Tut's tomb until an Englishman named Howard Carter discovered it. When he shone a light inside the closed space, he was speechless. He just stared at the superb treasures inside. For months, Carter explored and studied the tomb. He found the pharaoh inside a solid gold casket. A gold mask covered his face. The room was brightly painted and bordered in gold. Since then, many people have wondered how King Tut died. Some thought he was poisoned. Others thought he had fallen from a chariot during a race. He might have been killed while hunting lions or other fierce animals, as pharaohs were expected to do. These ideas made good stories, but the truth remained a mystery. Modern science changed that. Scientists observed and tested King Tut's body. His body told a story about his short life. Scientists are certain that Tutankhamun was not healthy. He probably couldn't ride a chariot. He definitely couldn't walk very far. King Tut had a bone disease that put him in constant pain. Pictures of the king show him clasping a cane. Many walking canes were found near him in his tomb. To make matters worse, King Tut caught malaria more than once. Malaria is a disease that is carried by mosquitoes. In early Egyptian times, there was no cure for the disease. Most scientists think that malaria killed King Tut.
The Liberty Bell report. The Liberty Bell is far from perfect. It never rings, and it has a huge crack. Yet it is a well-known symbol of the United States. To people from coast to coast, it means freedom. Why? The Liberty Bell has a rich history. It was made in England and sent to Philadelphia in 1752. The bell cracked when it was first tested. Some people accuse the makers of doing a poor job when making it. Rather than return it, the city of Philadelphia decided to fix it. The city's leaders hired 2 clever metalworkers. The men melted the bell down and made another bell, imitating the original. Then the new bell was hung in a tower. It was used to call lawmakers together. On July 4th, 1776, the Declaration of Independence was completed. Many people believe that the bell was rung at this time. However, experts who have explored its history say that the event never happened. In fact, some think that the steeple where the bell was hung was in a delicate condition. It was not strong enough to hold a ringing bell. Here is one story about the ringing of the bell on that day. In the 1840s, a writer named George Lippert wrote a tale about a bell ringer who wanted to ring the bell when the Declaration of Independence was completed. When the time came, he rang the bell in triumph. The sound was heard all over Philadelphia. Many Americans read and loved the story. From then on, the Liberty Bell was a symbol of independence. In 1846, the Liberty Bell was rung to honor the birthday of George Washington. He was the country's first president and another symbol of independence. The bell's clear sound pierced the air, but the ringing also had another effect. It widened a crack that had been forming. By noon, the ringing sounded terrible. Since that time, the bell has been silent. Just because the Liberty Bell no longer rang, it did not lose its importance as a symbol of freedom. Beginning in the late 1800s, the Liberty Bell was displayed across the country and was seen by many people. The Liberty Bell reminded Americans of their past and how they had worked together for freedom. Today, the Liberty Bell hangs in a glass building in Philadelphia. In the past, hearing its ring was a rare event, and now it does not ring at all. Still, it sings a song of freedom for all Americans.
The Terracotta Army. Journal article. In 1974, workmen who were digging a well in northwestern China discovered an ancient secret. They uncovered the first of many life-size clay soldiers in a tomb. These soldiers were made of a kind of clay called terracotta. Over time, workers at the tomb exposed more than 8,000 warriors and horses. The terracotta warriors and horses have been standing in the tomb for more than 2,000 years. Who were these statues supposed to be? What were they doing in the ground? Scientists have been unlocking the mystery for more than 30 years now. About 2,200 years ago, an emperor named Qin Shi Huangdi ruled the land now called China. To gain control, he fought wars all over the land, even in the remote areas. When Qin lived, it was the custom to bury a ruler with things he might need after he died. Qin had many enemies, so he felt he needed an army to protect his tomb. That's why the warriors look as if they are prepared to fight. The terracotta warriors are extremely lifelike. You can see strands of hair that cling to the neck. Every statue has a different face, hairstyle, and expression. Qin was not timid about making the tomb grand. Scientists believe it took 36 years to build. At least 700,000 people worked to complete it. Also, Qin wanted to take with him everything he had when he was alive. He made sure his body would be surrounded by silks, pearls, and gems. Qin also had statues of acrobats, singers, musicians, and dancers to entertain him. All these people would have performed for the emperor. There were also statues of pigs, dogs, horses, and sheep in the tomb. At one time, the horses had leather straps with shiny bronze metal. The bronze still shines, but the leather decayed long ago. The statues were painted in reds, blues, greens, and purples. When scientists took one statue out into the dry climate, the paint disappeared. Horrified, they looked for ways to save the colors in the other statues. The Emperor Qin accomplished a lot during his rule. He began using money for trading. He improved the systems for writing and for using weights and measures. The name China probably came from the word Qin. Scientists have learned a lot about how emperors lived by exploring Qin's tomb. Unfortunately, vandals, people who set out to destroy things on purpose, had disturbed part of Qin's tomb. Some things were also damaged by water or fire. Scientists have worked to piece together what was once there. Today, scientists are still uncovering more treasures from the tomb. With each discovery, we find out more and more about life in China so long ago.
The Talent Show. Realistic fiction. I can't sing in the talent show without you, Sundara said. I can't even sing with you, her brother Vijay replied. I am so bashful, I would probably melt right on the stage. That's a silly remark, Sundara said. You sing really well. I'm shy. Give me a break. Sundara did not give in. Please, 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 she begged. You know this talent show benefits the food bank? Okay, I'll consider it, Vijay said. Don't get your hopes up, though. Sundara kept trying. But we could win. You have a terrific voice, she said. Vijay said, You know I don't like to compete with other people. That's fine, Sundara said. Just rehearse with me then. For the next hour, Sundara and Vijay practiced together while their father played the piano. Finally, Vijay agreed to sing with his sister. The morning of the talent show, Vijay was very nervous. Then at breakfast, everything changed. Good morning, Sundara said in a low moan. What's wrong? Vijay asked. Then Sundara sneezed. Achoo! Get away, Vijay said. He shielded his face almost as a reflex. Sundara couldn't speak. She wrote a short note on a pad of paper and showed it to him. My throat's sore. I can't talk. Vijay was suddenly happy. Too bad, he said. No duet tonight. Sundara started scribbling and then thrust another note at him. Don't think for a brief moment that you aren't singing. Vijay started to protest. Sundara grabbed the pad again. She wrote, Stop it. You have the ability. Now just do it for the food bank. Vijay suddenly felt selfish. Of course, he had to sing. It was the right thing to do. That day, he kept busy to avoid thinking about the show. He practiced the song with his dad first. Then he rode his bike, washed the car, and did some homework. A few hours later, he was on stage. It was his turn to sing. Before VJ knew it, the song had ended. As he walked backstage, his mom hugged him and said, "Your song was delightful." Miss Spencer, the show's host, now took the stage. She had two announcements. First, the students had raised over $1,000 for the food bank. Second, the judges had made their decision. Miss Spencer announced the third place and second place winners. VJ was relieved that his name wasn't called. Next, Miss Spencer said, "It's time to announce the first place winner." She paused and said, "Let's have VJ Rana come to the stage." Miss Spencer handed him a trophy and then asked him to say a word or two. VJ said, "Thank you so much. This is a great honor. I want to dedicate this trophy to my sister. After all, I wouldn't be here if it weren't for her."
The Princess and the Pea. Fairy tale. Once upon a time, there was a rich, handsome prince. He was also a man of great wit and charm. Many maidens tried to conquer his affection. Often, they pretended to be princesses. It had all become very frustrating. The prince would only marry a true princess. One day, the prince was hunting in the woods. Suddenly, he saw a maiden on the brink of a cliff. She was crying softly. "What is wrong, dear lady?" he asked. "I wandered off from my royal party and am lost," she said. "Are you a princess?" "Of course," she snapped. "What do you intend to do to help me?" Before he could answer, the wind blew fiercely. A loud clap of thunder shook the forest. The fury of the storm made it impossible to speak. The prince helped the maiden onto his horse and took her back to his castle. By the time they reached the castle, the maiden felt a chill. Her cloak was wet and her teeth were chattering. The prince's servants brought hot soup. Then one of them handed the young woman a fresh gown with patterns of polka dots and stripes. The maiden shrieked, "A princess can't wear this! I must have velvet!" So the servant brought her a velvet gown. The maiden said, "I wish to sleep now." The prince thought, "She acts like royalty, but is she an actual princess? I must find out." The young woman was led up to a tower. 20 mattresses were placed, one on top of the other. The top mattress was covered with a quilt, made with vibrant patches of color. A pea was placed under the mattress at the very bottom of the pile. The maiden climbed a ladder to the top and got into bed. The next morning, the prince entered the tower. The maiden said, "I must apologize for my behavior yesterday. I was fortunate to have been saved from the storm. I am grateful for your help." "How did you sleep, dear lady?" the prince asked. The maiden said, "I hate to complain, but I slept very poorly. There is something hard under the bed." "So you are a princess! Will you marry me?" "I don't think so," she said. "You couldn't tell that I was a princess." "Many maidens have tried to fool me. I had to put you to the test. You felt the pea under the 20 mattresses. Only a real princess would be so delicate. Wouldn't you prefer someone who could truly judge your royal upbringing?" The princess softened. After they got to know one another, she agreed to marry him. They lived happily ever after, and the princess never again slept with a pea under her mattress. Treasure Among Diamonds. Journal article. In March 1533, a ship named Bom Jesus sailed from Lisbon, Portugal. It was headed for India. At the time, Portugal was in its full glory as a rich and powerful nation. Its kings and queens sent ships to trade in faraway places. It was a tradition to celebrate when a ship sailed. Flags waved in the harbor. Castles displayed colorful banners. In this way, people waved goodbye to the crew of the Bom Jesus. After leaving Lisbon, the ship approached the Atlantic Ocean. It was carrying a magnificent load of gold and copper for trading. Pieces of these metals would be traded for rare spices such as pepper and cloves. Later, the spices could be sold for a lot of money. In those days, Ship travel was not for the meek or easily frightened sailor. Danger was always near. Storms could arise. Ships could split apart on rocks. From 1525 to 1600, 21 ships bound for India were lost at sea. 4 or 5 months after leaving Lisbon, the Bom Jesus was approaching the tip of Africa. Suddenly, a wild storm pushed the ship toward the shore. The ship struck rocks. All that was on board spilled into the sea. The Bom Jesus sank out of sight. Hundreds of years later, diamonds were discovered in the African country of Namibia. The discovery happened to take place near the rocks where the Bom Jesus had sunk. Now a company had opened a diamond mine at the site. In 2008, a mine worker found an oddly shaped piece of copper on the beach. He took it to the mine company's geologist. The geologist, a scientist who studies the earth, recognized the piece. It was an ingot, a block of copper. He knew it would have been traded for spices long ago. The geologist also knew that if there was a copper ingot, there was a good chance that a shipwreck was nearby. He described the findings to scientists who searched for shipwrecks. However, since the diamond mining company owned the beach, the mine owners had to approve any plan for a search. The response of the mine owners was prompt. They agreed that scientists could look for the ship's wreckage. However, they would only give the searchers 10 weeks. Also, the owners would be watchful to make sure no diamonds disappeared from the beach. That meant examining each shipwreck item before it was removed from the site. The scientists believed that the ship was the Bom Jesus. Their guess turned out to be right. By the end of their search, they had uncovered 50 pounds of gold. They found 22 tons of copper ingots. They discovered cannons, swords, guns, and ivory. A wooden part of the ship was recovered too. All these treasures helped to tell the story and revive the memory of people who sailed the sea so long ago.
The Tiger's Promise, Korean folktale. Long ago, a tiger roamed in the area of a small village. The people were terribly frightened. They put up signs that read, "Watch out for the tiger." The warnings were punctuated with large exclamation points. However, the signs didn't do much good. The tiger remained in the area, and everyone was afraid to go outside. The villagers decided it would be better to try to prevent attacks by trapping the tiger. They dug a deep hole and covered it with branches. Sure enough, the tiger fell in and couldn't get out. The next day, a young man heard a barely audible cry. He looked down into the hole and saw the tiger weeping quietly. "What's wrong?" the young man asked. "Woe is me," said the tiger. "I fell into this hole. If I were a bird, I could fly out. If I were a snake, I could glide away through a tunnel. I am neither of these animals, so I am trapped. Please help me get out." The young man was kind, but he was not a fool. He said, "I can't help you. You'll eat me." "Not true," the tiger said. "Help me, and I'll return the favor to you someday." Meanwhile, his stomach rumbled with hunger. The young man lowered a log into the hole. The tiger used it to climb out. When he reached the top, he said, "Hello, breakfast." "Wait," the young man said. "You promised." "You were foolish to believe that," the tiger said with scorn. "Now, I'm afraid I will have to consume you." A skinny ox was grazing nearby. The young man called out to him, "Kind ox, do you think it's fair for the tiger to eat me?" The ox looked up from his meal. He said, "As a representative of all the beasts that spend their lives working, I would say it is quite fair. People have done nothing but take advantage of oxen since the origin of humankind. Just look at me. I should be stout and well rested, but instead I am lean and always tired." Just then, a small rabbit hopped by. The now desperate young man said, "Please, rabbit, what do you think? I helped the tiger out of the hole. Now he wants to eat me." The rabbit said to the young man and the tiger, "Show me how this happened." The young man removed the log from the hole. The tiger, anxious to eat his meal, jumped into the hole. The tiger said, "You see, I was here and—" "There you will stay," Rabbit said. He turned to the young man. "And you, young man, think twice before you rescue another tiger. A tiger never keeps a promise."
The Winter Olympics. News article. Every 4 years, countries from all over the world compete in the Winter Olympics. This competition is all about snow and ice. Opponents race and jump on skis. They fly 90 miles an hour down a track on bobsleds. Snowboarders jump and twist on courses of packed snow. Figure skaters make fantastic jumps and create beautiful arches in their backs as they twirl on the ice. Athletes go to the games with great hopes. All yearn to become champions. Some come back home with medals. Others don't win anything. All come back with one thing in common. They have had the experience of being an Olympic athlete. A brief history of the Olympic Games. The first Olympic Games took place about 3,000 years ago in ancient Greece. The earliest competition was a modest event. The racers ran a short distance on foot, only 210 yards. Later, more races were added. Events in wrestling, jumping, and throwing were also added. Then the Romans conquered Greece, and the Olympic Games eventually disappeared. In 1896, the first modern Olympics were held. The first games were the Summer Games, but people were already talking about a winter event. In 1924, the first Winter Games were held. The modern Winter Olympics. Many changes have come about in the past 9 decades of Winter Olympic competition. At first, professional athletes were not allowed to participate. In 1988, an agreement was signed that granted professionals the right to compete. Some of the first professional Winter Olympic athletes played on ice hockey teams. Today, technology helps with the grave responsibilities that come with judging Olympic events. Such technology can clarify who wins and who loses. In skiing and skating, a race can be won by fractions of a second. Today, computers make it easier to determine who wins and by how much. Also, judges may review an event on video. Doing so can help them decide if a first-place finish is valid. Going for the gold. In individual competition, the top 3 finishers of an event each earn a medal. The first-place medal is gold, the second place is silver, and the third place is bronze. Today, an authentic gold medal is only part gold. Solid gold medals are too expensive to make. After each event, the top 3 finishers stand on a platform. Each country's flag is raised. The gold medal winner listens to his or her country's national anthem. Tears may follow. It is an emotional occasion. At that moment, the athlete has been declared the best in his or her sport.
Amelia Earhart, 1897 to 1937. Biography. Surely no one in Amelia Earhart's family would have predicted that she would one day fly an airplane. Young Amelia showed no interest in airplanes. She was, on the other hand, interested in women who did admirable things. She collected newspaper articles about women who were engineers and lawyers. In the 1920s, it was unusual for females to have such careers. Years later, people would read about Earhart herself. Her devotion to flying would one day make her famous. Earhart's interest in flying was kindled by an exciting experience she had as a young woman. She had gone to an air show. At one point, Earhart heard a distant hum and looked up. A small red airplane was heading straight toward her and a friend. The plane flew so close that it blew Earhart's hair out of place. She was thrilled. When Earhart was 23, she flew on her first airplane. A year later, she took her first flying lesson. 6 months after that, she bought an airplane. In 1928, Earhart got a phone call. The man on the line wanted her to be the first woman to fly across the Atlantic Ocean. Was she interested? Earhart didn't have to think twice. An automatic reply of yes flew out of her mouth. 2 men flew the plane. Earhart made history just by being a passenger. That flight gave her an idea, though. Why couldn't she be the first woman to pilot the same route? In 1932, she achieved her goal. She became the first woman to fly a plane across the Atlantic. In 1931, Earhart married George Putnam. As she became more famous, she flew more often. Putnam supported Earhart's passion for flying. He didn't mind the long separations that the trips caused. His support helped her try new things. In 1935, she achieved her next goal. She flew across the Pacific Ocean alone. This flight was 2,408 miles long and would exhaust anyone. Yet Amelia was determined. At one point during the flight, the weather was dreary and cold. To warm herself, she opened a thermos of hot chocolate. She later told people that it was a special moment. There she was, sipping hot chocolate as she flew alone over the middle of the Pacific Ocean. In 1937, Earhart planned another trip. No other woman had flown around the world yet. She wanted to be the first. She hoped that this stunt would be her last. Sadly, it did become her final trip. Somewhere over the Pacific Ocean, Amelia Earhart's airplane disappeared. No one knows for sure what happened. She might have crashed in the ocean or on an island. Whatever occurred, Amelia Earhart has a place in history. Today, she is a symbol of courage and adventure.
The Great Barrier Reef. Magazine article. Dive into the waters of northeastern Australia and you will find the Great Barrier Reef. This natural wonder runs along the coast like a colorful underwater fence. You will see picturesque structures made of coral. Corals are made up of tiny sea creatures that are clumped together. They are often white, pink, or reddish. Some corals are shaped like fans. Others look like the horns of a deer or moose. Still others look like flowers. Perhaps you will have the privilege of seeing the reef from an airplane. This sight is equally stunning. You can see islands of coral in the clear blue-green water. Reefs keep growing in size. The Great Barrier Reef, which has been forming for millions of years, is about 1,400 miles long. Life on the reef is abundant. It is home to more than 1,500 kinds of fish. Hiding near the coral are tiny fish that have bodies you can see through. Deadly stonefish stare at divers with fierce eyes. Sea turtles, clownfish, and dolphins also swim in the waters. Fish like to find nooks and crannies within the reef. There, they can slumber in safety. They must stay hidden because the barrier reef is a hunting ground. Sharks, stonefish, and manta rays are just a few of the predators that search for food in these waters. In recent years, scientists have noticed changes in the Great Barrier Reef. They have inquired about how human activities might be affecting it. Money was set aside. Then formal tests were run. The tests showed that the reef is no longer growing. The scientists believe that the pollution of the air and land are two reasons behind the changes. Rain carries dangerous substances into ocean waters. It also washes chemicals that pollute the land into the ocean. These chemicals harm the reefs, which need clear, clean water to survive. Another problem might be the warming temperatures. Corals grow in warm oceans. However, if the water is too warm, they die. The Great Barrier Reef took a long time to form. To save the reef from destruction, the Australian government has passed laws to protect it. Anyone who knowingly breaks these laws will be penalized. In addition, scientists all over the world are putting their ideas together. Before long, they might conceive more ways to protect this natural treasure. 2 Troublesome Monkeys. Fantasy. Barney and Chi-Chi were monkeys who lived in the rainforest. They were always getting into trouble. They took advantage of the younger monkeys and stole their bananas. They played tricks on the older monkeys. One day, the monkey troop held a meeting. Chief Monkey announced, "We've had enough of you, Barney and Chi-Chi. What are you implying? Chi-Chi asked.
I'm not implying anything, Chief Monkey said. I am saying it clearly. You won't listen to anyone and you are defiant. Go and leave us all in peace. Now Chi-Chi had always wanted to travel.
Great, she said. I am totally ready.
Barney had always had ambition. He wanted to be Chief Monkey someday. He thought he might be able to learn things from people, so he agreed with Chi-Chi. The two of them caught the next train into the city. As soon as they got off the train, they saw a bus marked City Zoo.
Sounds like fun, said Chi-Chi.
Once inside the zoo, they caused nothing but trouble. They made faces at the giraffes, jumped on the backs of two fearsome tigers, and teased the bears. Soon, all of the animals in the zoo were upset and started screeching. The zookeeper said, "I revoke all your privileges to visit this zoo. You shouldn't have been allowed inside in the first place. I'm calling the police." By this time, the two monkeys were hungry and ready to leave anyway. Barney spotted a police officer buying a banana at a fruit stand. Chi-Chi grabbed the banana. Barney stole a mango. Then the two monkeys ran off as fast as they could. By then, the police were on full alert. The officers finally caught the monkeys. Not long after, the monkeys found themselves sitting in jail.
Have you noticed how dirty the city air is?
Chi-Chi asked. Yes, Barney said. They should purify it.
Have you noticed how small and damp this cell is?
It's wretched.
It's noisy here too, Chi-Chi remarked. And the banana I ate wasn't ripe. I think we were better off in the rainforest.
That idea merits further thought, Barney said. At that moment, Chief Monkey appeared outside the jail cell. She said, "I'm here to take you home."
Great!
Chi-Chi and Barney exclaimed together. "There's one condition."
We're glad to negotiate, Chi-Chi said. We don't really like the city.
Very well, Chief Monkey said. Then you will cause no more trouble at home. You'll respect both the young and old monkeys.
We promise,
the two monkeys said. And so the two monkeys went back to the rainforest. From then on, they were well behaved. In a few years, Chi-Chi, not Barney, became Chief Monkey. She kept perfect order within the troop. She knew how to deal with troublesome monkeys. After all, she had been one herself.
The Nile Crocodile. Journal article. The Nile crocodile is the largest crocodile in Africa. It is a fearsome animal with huge jaws. It also has large teeth. Its strong body can move quickly. Habitat. The Nile crocodile lives in the warmer parts of Africa. It must live near water. The animal will die without it. The Nile crocodile might live in tranquil freshwater lakes. It might live in muddy, swampy rivers. It might even live in a ditch. The Nile crocodile sometimes travels as far as 15 miles in search of water. Nile crocodiles can live for short periods in salt water. Scientists think that at some point they even swam across the channel that separates Madagascar from Africa. This would explain how this kind of crocodile came to live on Madagascar. Behavior. The Nile crocodile is a cold-blooded animal. It depends on its surroundings to keep its body warm and cool. To warm up, it lies in the sun to absorb heat. To cool off, it moves into the shade or the water. It also opens its mouth to let heat escape. Diet. For some crocodiles, waiting in the water for hours for its food might seem tiresome. For the Nile crocodile, however, it's all in a day's work. Unlike many animals that hunt on land, the Nile crocodile does not target mainly sick, lame, and weak animals. Instead, it waits to attack any animal that comes near. For example, a gazelle, a deer-like animal that moves with grace, might wander over for a drink. Its elegant neck reaches down to the water. At that moment, the Nile crocodile shoots out of the water. It grabs the gazelle with its huge jaws. A Nile crocodile eats almost anything that it can catch. It enjoys fish. It eats small or large land animals. It will even eat other crocodiles. Description.
Most people don't get close enough to a Nile crocodile to inspect it. However, if you could take a close look, you would see strong feet and legs. The tail is very strong too. It moves the crocodile through the water quickly. The tail is so powerful, in fact, that it can knock down a large animal. The eyes and nostrils of this crocodile are on the top of its head. This makes it possible for the crocodile to suspend its body underwater and still see and breathe. Tourists travel in boats to see Nile crocodiles. Both professional and amateur photographers have taken photographs of this fierce animal. Wise visitors know they must stay clear of its tail and mouth. If hungry, a Nile crocodile will take a bite out of almost anything, or anyone.
Gold, gold, gold. Textbook entry. Gold is the world's most valuable metal. One reason it is so valuable is because there is so little of it. What little there is can be hard to find. Still, many people have been willing to try to find it. It was 1848 in California. Pieces of gold the size of peas glistened on the ground. James Marshall, a worker at a sawmill, picked them up. He told John Sutter, the mill owner, about his find. The two men agreed to keep it quiet. They didn't want to create an uproar that would bring people into the area to look for gold. A storekeeper, Samuel Brennan, discovered their secret. He went to San Francisco, where he boasted about all the gold discovered at Sutter's mill. At the same time, he invested the money he had. He bought items such as picks and shovels and got ready to sell them in a store near Sutter's mill. It was an ideal plan. Miners would need supplies, and he would sell them everything they needed. What Marshall and Sutter had feared came true. The possibility of finding gold was sufficient encouragement for thousands of people. They sold their homes and left everything behind to search for gold. They came from all over the world. In all, more than 80,000 people rushed to California. Miners bent over streams day after day looking for gold. They dipped metal pans into the rippling water and sifted for gold. They took tools called pickaxes and dug into the earth. The California gold rush was on. Some people did become rich. 3 German miners located a large supply of gold. Their mine eventually produced gold worth about $561 million today. Another small group, the Murphy brothers, found gold in their first few days of mining. By the end of the year, the gold they found was worth about $37 million in today's dollars. Other people were not so lucky. Hiram Pierce came from Troy, New York. He paid $25 for a cradle, a tool that separated dirt from gold. By the time he returned home a year or two later, he was broke. Pierce wrote eloquent descriptions and stories about mining. The work was difficult. Miners had to wade in freezing streams. They moved heavy dirt. They got hurt in accidents. Many Native Americans were losers in the California gold rush too. When miners became sick with infectious diseases, many Native Americans who lived in the area caught the diseases and died. Today, gold is used for many things. There is gold in some computer parts. People wear gold jewelry. Countries collect gold, which helps them protect the value of their money. As long as gold is scarce, it will continue to be the world's most precious metal.